When I heard about the first program coming up, I said, I'm going to be there when it launches.
So I'm lucky I'm still here, so I get to see it just before I fly back to England.
Countdown to blast off. The Artemis 2 commands the eyes of millions for a history-making slingshot around the moon, and we've got you covered. So from history in space to a history-making visit by a sitting U.S. president front and center inside the U.S. Supreme Court. President Donald Trump stared down the justices who ruled against his tariff power, and now consider this issue. The big question, President Trump's executive order designed to redefine birthright citizenship. It's also countdown to the president's address to the nation regarding the war in Iran. Is a ceasefire in the Middle East truly in the works? And what the president says about the next few weeks. I'm Reed Cowan. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Let's go. So right off the top, you see it right there. A live look at the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. All eyes on Artemis 2, NASA's first piloted trip around the moon in more than 50 years. That 4-person crew is scheduled to lift off for a 10-day mission. It happens in just hours. And this is the place, CBS News 24/7, where you can watch streaming coverage all day long leading up to liftoff. But we start at the U.S. Supreme Court, where President Trump's effort to end birthright citizenship in the United States meets the test of questions from justices on the high court. So at issue today, is President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship constitutional? President Trump made history becoming the first sitting U.S. president to be present for those oral arguments at the U.S. Supreme Court. You see his vehicle right there. Now, he's back at the White House as of this hour, but he attacked the court ahead of today's hearing. He criticized its ruling against his tariff policies. He also says his birthright executive order would stop what he calls the sale of U.S. citizenship around the world. Ultimately, the fate of that order rests with those justices. So here's some of what the attorney arguing against the president had to say after court. Listen.
I come out of the court today with the thought of my parents and so many of our parents and ancestors who came to this country seeking refuge, seeking new opportunities, and who relied on the rule that we've had in this country for 150 years, that everyone born here is a United States citizen, all alike. And I'm confident that the court is going to turn back this president's effort to radically rewrite our 14th Amendment rule of birthright citizenship.
So let's talk to somebody who keeps me grounded and smart. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford joining us outside the Supreme Court. Okay, so you were there. You heard those oral arguments. First, take us through what you heard in a general sense, Jan.
Well, in the most general sense, Reed, I think we can all pretty much safely say that President Trump is going to lose another case in the Supreme Court. You mentioned he lost the tariffs case. He's not going to win this case either. These justices, through their questions, through their demeanor, they clearly indicated today that they do not believe that President Trump can redefine what it means to be a citizen in this country by the sign of a pen with an executive order. That long-held understanding that if you're born on U.S. soil, you're a U.S. citizen. They do not believe that President Trump can just come in and say, unless, of course, your parents are here illegally. The questions were pretty clear from the get-go. The Chief Justice, starting right off the bat, expressing pretty sharp skepticism when Trump's lawyer got up to make the case on his behalf. Of course, as you said, the president was there in that courtroom. I mean, he came in about 10 minutes till 10. Took his seat in the very front row of the public section. No special seat for the president. And that's where like cabinet officials typically sit. And he stayed throughout the first half of the argument, heard his attorney, the Solicitor General, arguing on his behalf. And then I'd say about 7 minutes after that, he very quietly got up and left. And there was absolutely no change in the justices and their demeanor and their questions. You would have no idea the president was in that courtroom today from the beginning till when he left, till after the argument. You have no idea if we hadn't got a heads up about it. And so we, of course, were watching to see when he came in the courtroom.
So when is the decision expected to be announced, Jan?
Well, you know, on these big cases, and this one's argued pretty late in the term. I mean, it's, believe it or not, April, which I can't, spring already. So this case I would not expect to get before the very end of June. Those cases, these big, weighty constitutional questions that sometimes divide the justices, take longer for them to write, and already we're kind of toward the end anyway. So the justices like to wrap up all their opinions, and they've got some big ones this term, Reed. They like to wrap those up by the end of June. That's when their session typically ends. I would expect this one they'll be able to do pretty quickly. I would think that this is going to be a case, again, that the Supreme Court is not going to be sharply divided on. I would guess maybe one or two justices may think Trump has a pretty good argument, but it's likely, I would expect, 7-1, a 7-2, 8-1. But we'll see when that opinion comes out which way they go.
Jen Crawford calling the courts, and also love how you call basketball. Big fan. Thank you so much, friend.
Thank you.
Good to
Thanks.
talk to you. President Trump back at the White House now after listening to his Solicitor General make those arguments to keep that executive order in place. And CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang joins us live. Weijia, the president left that Supreme Court after the government wrapped up their arguments. Why was it important for him to be right there in person in that public section that Jan just mentioned?
Well, that's the only section for the president. There isn't a determined place for any president because he is the first one sitting, at least, who has ever attended oral arguments. And that's for a very specific reason, Reed, because his predecessors wanted to make sure that there was a clear distance between the branches of government. They didn't want to appear as if they were trying to influence any case, but of course this president is very different. He has made it very well known that he believes, especially the conservative justices who he nominated, ought to be following his agenda. And so he had no problems about going there and listening to these arguments, which really shows how important this case is to President Trump. There have been other massive cases. In fact, we just got a ruling on the tariffs case, and that is the heart of his entire economic policy. He didn't even go listen to those arguments. So this should tell you how much he cares about this issue. In fact, as soon as he came to office this term on day one, he signed that executive order to end birthright citizenship. But as Jan just laid out, it doesn't appear that he's going to win this battle. Of course, it's something we expect he will continue to talk about, as he has done since he came here to the White House.
Well, and he's not only making headlines for that Supreme Court appearance and then his follow-up post on Truth Social, but he'll also make headlines later today when he addresses the American people regarding the war in Iran. What do you expect to hear from the president on that?
Well, we've been talking to White House officials here who say that he's really going to give an operational update on the war in Iran and the progress so far of what the U.S. military has accomplished there. And he's going to highlight all of the things that have been done to achieve his stated goals for this operation, which of course include completely destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities, along with its Navy, ensuring their terrorist proxies no longer destabilize the region, and also destroy its deadly ballistic missiles. But Reed, we shouldn't expect any huge announcements in terms of troops on the ground, as one example. I'm not expecting the president to declare victory. This really is an opportunity for him to message to the American people what the military has done so far, why they are still there, but also to reiterate when this will end, because that is the question that many Americans continue to ask. So I think the president wants to make his case, especially as, polling consistently shows that most Americans do not want to be in this war, not to mention another set of numbers, which is gas prices, which I know that you've been reporting on.
Right.
But as this war continues, it's taking a toll on the global oil industry, and that's hurting people here at home at the gas pumps.
President Trump to address the nation tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Weijia Jiang, thank you so much. It's going to be a very long day for our entire CBS News White House team. We appreciate your service to our viewer. Now this. Well, a live look at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where the countdown to history is on. So in just hours, we expect liftoff of 4 astronauts. They're going to ride a rocket for the first piloted mission around the moon in more than 50 years. Okay, so the crew suited up, and later this hour, we will see them headed out to the launch pad. A lot of experience and a lot of history, a lot of institutional knowledge on board that mission. Commander Reed Wiseman and pilot Victor Glover. Glover set to become the first black astronaut to fly around the moon. They'll join mission specialist Christina Cook. By the way, Cook holds the record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman at nearly a full year in space logged. Also inside the capsule, mission specialist Jeremy Hansen. So if all goes to plan, Hansen will become the first Canadian to ever venture to fly around the moon. So let's go for a flight ourselves, live to the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and somebody who always brings the coolest toys, the coolest props there to tell us all about this. CBS News space consultant Bill Harwood talking about what must be going through the astronauts' minds right now. Hi, Bill.
Hey, how you doing? Well, you know, we're seeing them in the suit-up room at the Kennedy Space Center. The technicians will test those suits for, make sure they're airtight, that the communications all work, all of that. And then shortly they're going to head for the pad to strap in. And as you said, this will be the first time astronauts have ridden this rocket, have strapped into an Orion capsule and flown it in space. So it really is a test flight, first and foremost. And of course, they're going to test it both in Earth orbit and all the way around the moon and back. So a very ambitious mission that NASA hopes will help pave the way to landings in 2028.
Wow. Okay, so you're looking at live pictures right now and getting the okay as they all get strapped in. Not only am I a bit of a space geek, I'm pretty much of a big nerd. I looked up Artemis. She's the Greek goddess of the hunt, and untamed nature and the moon are her territories there. So she is aptly named. But also the sister to Apollo, which leads me to my next question. As we watch the people getting ready for liftoff, we are thinking about the Apollo. What are the differences between Artemis and the Apollo mission?
Well, it's similar in some respects. This flight, of course, is just going around the moon and back. It kind of reminds us of Apollo 8 in 1968 when they sent 3 astronauts into orbit around the moon without landing. But this time around, it really is a test flight to make sure that Orion capsule is up to snuff before they head out to the moon. But one of the big differences, the Apollo program was the result of the Cold War space race with the former Soviet Union. The plan this time is really to establish a long-term presence on the moon. Apollo is looked back as, you look back on that sort of as a boot prints and flags planting mission. This is more of a habitat moon base, a permanent presence on the lunar surface. That's a huge difference. And I have to say, it's a very challenging goal, and it remains to be seen if, subsequent Congresses, subsequent presidential administrations will give NASA the money it's going to take to do that. But that is the plan. NASA hoping to build a moon base and have people up there, in long duration flights near the moon's south pole. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
And what's so cool is how NASA is offering us these live pictures. There's several cameras right now looking at astronaut Victor there. These moments to suit up aren't just as quick as getting in, because as we know, what they wear can actually sustain human life and prolong human life if something goes wrong. Walk us through some of the live pictures that we're seeing as we see all of those tests happening.
Well, the suits look very familiar to those orange pressure suits that shuttle astronauts used to wear back in the day. These have been upgraded and improved. In fact, the astronauts can actually live in these suits, totally self-contained, for more than 6 days. If you had some catastrophic failure where the cabin lost air pressure, they could actually live for multiple days inside the suits, or at least long enough to get back to Earth, it would be hoped. So it's a very sophisticated spacesuit, and they take quite a bit of time, as you can see, checking them out, making sure everything's ship-shape and ready to go before they head to the pad to strap in. And even when they get out there, they'll run additional tests when they hook it up to the life support systems of the capsule and the communications lines, all of that. So still quite a ways to go, but the clock's ticking down, and so far, no major problems of any significance.
All right, so you're looking at the commander of Artemis 2 mission, Reed Wiseman there. He is also getting suited up, and they're also running all of the diagnostics and tests on him as well. Why is it so important for NASA to show the process, the science behind this?
Well, first of all, it's not new to show the astronauts suiting up. They've done that for decades. I mean, all the way, back to the beginning of the shuttle program. I think it's all part of the fact that NASA is a public agency by law, and they want to share what they're doing because it helps get them public support for people who enjoy this sort of thing. And I think it also shows the world something. When NASA was born, it was the U.S. versus the Soviet Union, and the Soviets never showed anything until after the fact. Whereas NASA was public from day one, embarrassing failures and triumphant successes, all of that. And I think they view it as a way to demonstrate a way of life, really, in a free country versus what existed back then. And that's simply carried over to the present day.
All right, and so Christina Cook, you could see there just a second ago in that other shot, also going through some of these diagnostics. And so everything we're seeing play out really has been done over and over and over, not just rehearsing, but testing, correct?
Absolutely, and this is like I said, the first flight of this rocket and capsule with a crew on board, but these astronauts have trained for this multiple times. They've gone through the very procedures you're seeing right now. Before, they suit up for practice countdowns. They do this. They run through launch days procedures in a simulator at the Johnson Space Center. So, it's old hat to them, but it's a lot of fun for us on the outside to watch it when it's real and it's about to happen.
It sure is. And you know what? It punctuates for any kiddo watching there who may identify with one of those astronauts sitting in any of those chairs. I can do it too. Yep, there we go. There's Christina, the astronaut right there, sporting a braid, wanting to keep the hair in check as she flies through space and around the moon. You've got to wonder what's going through her mind as well as she is part of making history, Bill.
Well, one thing about Christina Cook, you mentioned the duration of her flight. She participated in the first 3 all-female spacewalks, you might remember, from a few years ago outside the International Space Station. And she's a veteran of 6 spacewalks overall, so an extremely experienced astronaut. She brings a lot of expertise to this mission, and she's the one who's kind of going to be behind the scenes, making sure her crewmates, they check through the checklist, get everything done on time for the various major stages of the flight. She plays a key role.
Yep, she holds the record for one of the longest times in space, 300 and some odd, 40 something odd days there, Bill. We're going to check back in with you and our entire CBS News team there at Kennedy Space Center. It's been just a joy to watch this happen and to have you and your expertise talk us through it. Bill Harwood, thank you so much. And you can watch a full day of coverage just like this on CBS News 24/7, the Artemis II launch. We make it easy when you download the free CBS News app. I have Jessica here. Of course, Jessica is one of our nation's servants as well. And I just loved hearing you behind me and your point of pride, Jess, because you see right there, there's been this push recently for women in science, women in STEM. You and I have talked about that off camera. I see the tears in your eyes,
She's just
friend.
so
I love
cool,
you for that.
guys. You don't even get it.
Yeah.
What a big deal. And just to see her continuing to do more missions and continue to just inspire so many. I'm inspired, truly I am. I get choked up just listening to it.
No, I love it that you are, because it means something to you, and it means something to, my daughter's in a science class right now in a middle school right up the road, and it means something to her as well.
Absolutely, and to all the girls around. And the reality is, this is such a big day for us, too. And all the data, everything that they're collecting today, it's going into the next missions, eventually to see bigger things come from the Artemis II launch today. But we got to get to the weather and the conditions before they're even able to launch. And right now, we're keeping a very close eye on our friends all the way over in Cape Canaveral. Lots of things to talk about right now. There is some passing light showers, but into the evening hours tonight, just in time for that launch. We see partly cloudy skies in the forecast for us, 70s on tap for us. Temperatures actually play a factor when it comes to whether or not they can launch and whether or not it's a go. You take a look at the liftoff weather criteria. Temperatures need to be above 40 degrees, but below 95-ish. As for winds, they can't be anywhere stronger than 33 miles per hour. And then on top of that, no lightning in the vicinity, which luckily there's none anyways, within a 10-mile radius. Now we get into the clouds. This is interesting. 3 miles away from any thunderstorms, 5 miles away from any clouds, about 4,000 feet in size. And of course, no precipitation at all, which is exactly what we don't have there. So things are looking great for us. Now you take a look at the rest of the country. Of course, there's stormy weather widespread from Texas and Houston all the way up into New York today. We're continuing to track the severe weather that's building and shifting off into the east as we head into the overnight hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow, making its way over into the Great Lakes, eventually into the northeast with some snow on the north end of that area of low pressure. And then we turn our page into this weekend's forecast. More severe weather expected across the plains. That's what I'm going to keep a close eye on as we head into the rest of the week. Reed?
All right, Jess, question for you before you say goodbye. Would you go? Would you go?
No.
No, okay. Now let's get to this story, a reminder of the dangers of being a journalist in a war zone. So as we broke first right here on CBS News 24/7 yesterday, an American journalist has been kidnapped in Baghdad. She's a freelance journalist, Shelley Kittleson, grabbed and taken in Baghdad against her will. It happened yesterday. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay knows Shelley and reports on the kidnapping and now the frantic search to find her.
Well, an American journalist has been kidnapped in central Baghdad. Her name is Shelley Kittleson, and according to Iraqi authorities, it was in broad daylight when these armed men stuffed her into a car and sped away with her. In fact, they say that the CCTV footage captured it in the process. They also say that there was an effort to rescue her, and in that effort, one of the vehicles of the kidnappers was overturned, and they have since arrested the member of this Iran-backed militant group. However, Shelley was not inside of that vehicle. Her whereabouts remain unknown. Also, the motive of the kidnappers remains unknown. I've been speaking to colleagues of hers, also editors of hers at different outlets that she writes for. I used to work with her. I know her from her time in Rome. She still resides part-time here in Rome. In speaking to some of her editors, they say that she was filing for them and in communication with them up until just hours before she was taken hostage. One of her editors told me that one of those messages he got from her was her saying that she was worried about her safety because of her identity as an American. I've also spoken to a hostage negotiator with extensive experience in the Middle East who emphasized how crucial it is that there be some kind of breakthrough within the first 24 hours of her kidnapping. And unfortunately, that clock is quickly ticking away. Back to you.
Chris Livesay, thank you. On the map in California now, where a Sacramento mother is now back in California after ICE deported her to Mexico. CBS News Sacramento's Ashley Sharp reports on her emotional return.
A family reunited after more than a month of living what they call a nightmare.
I was taken away from my daughter without a warning. I didn't get to prepare. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get a real chance to speak to a judge or defend myself.
Maria de Jesus Estrada Juarez, a Natomas resident and a DACA recipient, was deported to Mexico on February 19th, just 24 hours after she showed up to the federal building downtown for what she thought was a routine immigration status appointment to get a green card.
This has been one of the most painful experiences of my life. As a mother, being separated from my child.
For Maria's daughter,
it was like grieving someone who is still alive. This should never happen to anyone.
Just last week, a federal judge ruled Maria's removal was unlawful and ordered she be returned back to the United States.
There was two things that happened very wrong in Maria's case. One, it was that she was unlawfully deported because she was a DACA recipient, and two, it was that basis of that deportation was all on a removal order from 1998 that actually was never final to begin with.
My mind was blown. Nobody before this would have thought that the government would knowingly deport somebody with DACA.
In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security claimed Maria did receive due process, adding that DACA does not confer any form of legal status in this country. Any illegal alien who is a DACA recipient may be subject to arrest and deportation for a number of reasons, including if they've committed a crime. DHS alleges Maria re-entered the country illegally, which her attorney claims is not true.
I am home now, and I will use my voice to make sure others are not silenced or taken away.
So we understand the stress is not over for Maria. Her DACA status expires at the end of the month. So for now, she's focused on getting that DACA status renewed. Well, the Jewish holiday of Passover starts today, just weeks after the attack on a temple in Michigan sent shockwaves throughout the nation. As tensions remain high amidst increased numbers of anti-Semitic attacks in the United States, CBS News Detroit's Alicia Bergio has a message from police protecting sites like this.
Truly all about community. It is about reflecting on our past, celebrating our freedom, and also looking to a much brighter future.
This Wednesday, the 8-day Jewish holiday of Passover begins. A celebration West Bloomfield Rabbi Jason Miller says mostly takes place in the comfort of one's home.
Many congregations have community Passover Seders as well, and we go to our houses of worship, to our synagogues, to our temples, for prayer services throughout the entire Passover holiday.
On March 12th, an attack on Temple Israel prompted police to beef up patrols at Jewish places of worship. Rabbi Miller says this presence has created a sense of comfort in the community.
We recognize that there is certainly an enhanced level of local law enforcement keeping us secure, keeping us safe, giving us reassurance in our houses of worship, and we are so grateful. I wish that we didn't need local law enforcement to protect us in our houses of worship. Unfortunately, it's a sad reality.
Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard tells CBS News Detroit his team is committed to keeping everyone safe, especially as families gather during Passover.
You'll see increased presence and extra patrol around Jewish temples and synagogues. We're aware to the heightened threat and the feelings that people have out there, and they should see some visible presence as well as things that they may not see.
As the community recovers with resilience, Bouchard has this message.
We'd rather check out 100 nothings than miss one real deal, so don't be afraid to call if you see or feel or hear something that seems unusual.
As for Rabbi Miller, the meaning of Passover has a profound impact.
While Passover may be a Jewish holiday, the themes are themes that resonate with every human being. The idea that there really should be world peace.
In West Bloomfield, Alicia Bergio, CBS News, Detroit.
CBS News 24/7 continuing coverage. Artemis 2 mission around the moon. As we look live at this picture, you see the countdown clock there, top right hand of your screen. When that hits 0, you will likely see blastoff. That's if all conditions look to be perfect. And so far, they look really good at Kennedy Space Center. Astronauts, we understand right now, going through some of the diagnostic testing, making sure that every T is crossed, every I is dotted on the way to this history-making flight around the moon. You're watching CBS News 24/7. All right, check that shot out. We were looking kind of at the nose of Artemis. Scientists will hear me say that and say that's not the nose. But to this layperson, you're looking at the nose of the Artemis 2 as it gets ready for the moon mission. Kennedy Space Center, the countdown to launch right there at the top right side of your screen. Tell everybody you know we are the place to watch that liftoff here. CBS News 24/7. If you download the free CBS News app, you can watch that today as the countdown to that blastoff happens. Well, the future of what defines citizenship in the United States now in the hands of the U.S. Supreme Court. So the justices appear to be skeptical of President Trump's bid to end birthright citizenship in this country by executive order. CBS News immigration correspondent Camilo Montoya Galvez watching this case also closely for us. So Camilo, those justices asking some pretty hard questions to the government if they should rule in the Trump executive order. What was your read from some of the questions? It sounds like from Jan Crawford's read of it that President Trump's about to get another loss at the Supreme Court.
Well, Reed, it would truly be a seismic and dramatic change in policy if the Supreme Court actually upholds the Trump administration's effort to try to really eliminate the longstanding interpretation of the Constitution and the principle of birthright citizenship that has been enforced here in the U.S. in modern American history. But as you noted, the judges, including some of the conservative justices, appeared skeptical of what the Trump administration is arguing. That legal theory that only the children of American citizens or permanent residents can actually acquire citizenship at birth is a novel theory. to say the least, and the justices seem skeptical, including some of the Republican-appointed justices. But again, if the High Court were to actually uphold this order by President Trump, it would have far-reaching consequences. A new study by researchers at Penn State found that up to 6.4 million children could be born without a defined legal immigration status and without American citizenship by year 2050, over the next 25 years, if that order is upheld and enforced over the next quarter century. So it would affect millions of children born here in the U.S., to people not only who are in the country illegally, Reed, but importantly, to parents who are in the country legally, but only on a temporary basis. So again, while the judges may be skeptical of what the Trump administration is arguing, if they were to uphold this order, it would be quite consequential, Reed.
Yeah, right. And you saw that baby there on the screen a moment ago. I've really been getting granular about what would happen if the president's executive order actually was allowed to stand, especially its impact on children. We're talking about children who otherwise could have access to early child care and interventions, immunizations, WIC, those huge programs that help young ones born on U.S. soil. The Trump administration also argued today that U.S. citizenship is demeaned by allowing birthright citizenship. What's the likely reaction amongst immigration advocates to that term, demeaned?
Well, pro-immigrant advocates, Reed, would likely argue to push back on that claim by the Trump administration that if this order is actually upheld by the High Court, it would permanently create an underclass of children who would be in a limbo status, if you will, here in the U.S., millions potentially by year 2050, according to that Penn State study. And they would create, this administration would, a permanent underclass of children who would not have the social, legal, and political rights as their peers, even though they were also born in this country and would otherwise have an American upbringing. They would not be able to, as you rightly underscored, access certain benefits, including medical benefits, but also be able to vote once they're 18 and have other, again, legal rights here in the U.S. But the administration argues, again, that the foundational problem with the birthright citizenship principle is that it attracts illegal immigration because, in the administration's point of view, it attracts people to come here just for the purposes of having kids who will ultimately get American citizenship. So it's a hotly contested issue, but it does appear like the High Court is extremely skeptical of what the Trump administration is arguing and what it argued today in front of the justices this morning, Reed.
And as Jan Crawford reported earlier during this broadcast, we expect that decision to come out sometime between now and midsummer. Camilo, thank you once again for your reporting. We appreciate you. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman also listened in on those arguments and joins us live now. Katrina, we know that you have a legal background as well. What did you make of the argument? Are you reading the same tea leaves that this could tee up a defeat in the Supreme Court by the Trump administration?
I think there is a general sense that the justices were very skeptical of some of the arguments that were made today. And I think an exemplary quote is from the Chief Justice himself. He said, "It's a new world. It's the same Constitution." This was in response to Solicitor General John Sauer's argument. He was saying that we live in this new world where 8 billion people can jump on a plane, fly to America, and have a child that's born an American citizen. A lot of the Trump administration's argument also turned on key words in the citizenship clause, Reed, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And what they're trying to argue is that if someone's parents are here unlawfully, temporarily, that they don't have a permanent allegiance to the United States, and so they're not actually fall under this subject to the jurisdiction thereof clause. The Chief Justice, again, called this interpretation quirky. So these all seem to be strong indicators of the way the court is leaning. They did ask very tough questions of both sides. Significantly, the lawyer who was arguing for the ACLU, for the challengers, was a birthright citizen herself.
So you got a chance to be in the courtroom as President Donald Trump entered and exited. Did he give any sort of physical indication or any sound about how he felt about how things were playing out in front of him today?
Well, we saw him post after he left the arguments that it is, I believe he said, stupid that the U.S., he said, is the only country, he called it, with birthright citizenship. Our correspondent, chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford, was in the room, and she said that he was basically in there like any other person. He was seated in the front row of where the public sits. She said that she didn't notice the justices taking that much note of him. Reed, it is very significant, though, and unprecedented for a sitting president to attend Supreme Court oral arguments. This has not been done in modern times. Along with him, reportedly, was Attorney General Pam Bondi and Howard Lutnick. Also in the room, apparently, was actor Robert De Niro. So this was quite a room for these birthright citizenship arguments, which is the most consequential case that the Supreme Court will hear this term.
All right, Katrina Kaufman, we appreciate your thoughts and observations. Thank you so much. Let's go back to Kennedy Space Center. You are looking live at the countdown to launch. Artemis 2 and what will be one heck of a slingshot around the moon if all the training and all the preparation goes as planned. Continuing coverage as we count down to launch on CBS News 24/7. How about we look live once again at Kennedy Space Center? What a cool shot that is in Florida. The countdown to history is on. So in hours, we expect liftoff of 4 astronauts. They're going to ride this huge rocket for the first piloted mission around the moon in more than 50 years. Proud to see this, right? So the crew is suited up. You can see them getting ready right now. They're running all of the diagnostic tests. All of them are wearing those outfits that Bill Harwood mentioned. They could survive in, sustain life for up to 6 days. The crew's suited up in those life-sustaining outfits, and any moment now we will see them headed out to the launch pad. A lot of experience, a lot of history going on board. Mission Commander Reed Wiseman and pilot Victor Glover. Glover is set to become, by the way, the first black astronaut to fly around the moon. They'll join mission specialist Christina Cook, who we saw getting suited up as well. She holds the record, by the way, for the longest single space flight by a woman at nearly a full year in space. Talk about somebody with resolve, right? And steel in her spine. Also inside the capsule, by the way, mission specialist Jeremy Hansen. So if all goes to plan, Hansen will become the first Canadian to ever venture to fly around the moon. So back live now to Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman. And also with us, we are honored to say, former NASA astronaut and the Assistant Deputy Chief of Space Operations at the United States Space Force, Brigadier General, by the way. That's one hell of a LinkedIn title, General Haig. You know this crew personally. So as we talk about your very lengthy title and resume, you also know the crew. What are they likely thinking and feeling as they get suited up?
Yeah, no, Christina and Victor are classmates of mine, so we were selected back in 2013 and have spent a decade with them. They are amazing people, and I can tell you right now they are excited as they've donned these launch and entry suits. They're ready to head to the vehicles to go out to the pad, and as they approach the pad, that's when everything's going to come into laser focus. They've got a mission ahead of them, and all that training, the 3 years leading up to this, it's time to put it to work. They're ready.
They're ready. Time to put it to work. I love how you put that. And of course, Mark Strassman, my fellow space geek friend, it's good to see you there right in front of the launch pad. Talk to us about the importance of this from a scientific perspective.
Well, we're on the eve of a new lunar era for NASA. I mean, we're going from low Earth orbit to pushing out deeper in space and a return to the moon. It's a significant difference. There's a lot more to it. When you put human beings in a capsule in low Earth orbit and they run into trouble, you can be back in hours. When you put them into a lunar mode, it's days. Once you have that translunar injection, it's days before you come back if you run into a problem. So the stakes are much higher. Everything is more complicated. But NASA has been working on this now for a number of years. They feel they're at a place where they can do this test flight. Remember, this is the first time that people have ever flown in this rocket, and this is the first time that people have ever used this capsule. The life support system of this capsule, 90% of it is the first time it's ever been to space. So there are a lot of unknowns here, and you've got to salute the courage of the 4 people riding on this mission, because they've stepped up and said, I'm willing to give this a shot. Let's see what we've got here. This is a test flight to set it up for Artemis Artemis 4, which would be a moon landing where you would have the first return to the moon, footsteps kicking up lunar dust. That is scheduled for early in 2028.
Well, and just to explain what our viewers just saw, you just saw those live pictures of our 4 astronauts getting inside what is probably to them peanuts, and that's the elevator taking them a little closer to what their mission is. Any moment now, we'll see them go through those double doors and down the ramp to make history. General Haig, you know what it's like to be party to an aborted launch. That was back in 2018. Is this arguably one of the riskiest moments for these astronauts? And if not, what was that experience like?
Yeah, you know, space flight is it's full of risk. And, you know, you've got 4 people that have trained for 3 years to respond in any situation that's thrown at them that we can think of. And so they know how to respond to that. And, you know, that's in large part thanks to the thousands and tens of thousands of people that have dedicated their lives to building the hardware, to training the crews, to making sure that they're ready for this. Is Artemis 2 a risky mission? It is a test flight, and as Mark said, they're doing a lot of firsts, and so they rely on the teams on the ground to support them through all of it.
Forgive me for being impatient, but I just cannot wait to see the photos, the videos streaming from inside that rocket. Do you have any sense of when the world watching this will be able to see those images beam back from space?
Oh, I'm with you. I can't wait to see those coming back. So I'm waiting in as eager anticipation as the rest of us are. It can't be soon enough. To be able to know that there's a human on the other side of that camera taking photos of the moon and the Earth simultaneously. I think there's a whole generation that's growing up now that will start to appreciate our place in our solar system in a whole different way.
Right, and you know, let's talk to Mark Strassman. Mark, you likely were a young whippersnapper in prior missions when the United States was able to have that point of pride. Talk to us about that next generation and what you're hearing there from the launch pad about what this means to young Americans who are watching this, who think, hey, I'm seeing a female fly to space, I'm seeing an astronaut of color fly to space, I can do it too.
Yeah, I remember talking to Christina Cook, for instance. She, remember Apollo 8 captured that image, that iconic image, Earthrise. And Earthrise inspired the environmental movement to a large degree, and it also inspired a number of young people to look up at the sky and imagine that they could go up there too. Christina had that photo on her bedroom wall as a teenager.
Wow.
So you're talking about, you know, you and Nick are talking about what images are going to come back. Well, what is going to be the new image that's going to end up on a 13-year-old's bedroom wall in the next couple of years? You just never know, and you know, there's the romance of surprise, right? We didn't expect to get that image. Who knows what image we're going to get back this time, and who knows how that is going to touch some young person who is looking up at the sky or looking at the TV monitor and saying to themselves, wow, I want to be part of that.
Right, and General Haig, this has to really be a point of pride also for science teachers, right? And maybe a little bit of a finger wag to kids everywhere right now who are probably watching from their classrooms as we prepare for liftoff to do well in science and to pay attention in science class.
Yeah, education is the foundation for a lot of this, and making sure that you get a strong education that's going to propel you through life. It opens up doors. It's what opened up doors for myself. It's what opened up the doors for these 4, all the astronauts that came before them. And in reality, you know, I mentioned the tens of thousands of people that support a mission like this. That education is what fueled them to be able to make their contribution. It's you know, there's 4 crew members that are going to climb on that rocket, but there's a lot of people that it took to get them there. You've got the workforce within NASA, the contractor workforce that's supporting them. You even have the military that's helping support this mission as well. And you know, and I'm proud to be here and representing Guardians across the globe that are making this mission possible.
And here they come right there. You're seeing the astronauts. We couldn't have timed this any better. There they are, walking out of the door onto that ramp. And as we take this full and watch this right here, look at, he's clapping his hands. It's go time, right? And you hear the cheers. What are they feeling, General?
It's this overwhelming rush of adrenaline. You're walking out, you're seeing friends and family across the way, keeping their distance as they've had to because of quarantine. You're saying your last goodbyes. Sometimes the words just don't do it justice, and you're just in the moment, embracing the emotion, making eye contact with your loved ones, and as they wish you off on what this will be an amazing journey.
And you know what I see, and maybe Mark, you can weigh in here as well. I see the result of teamwork. You see the astronauts there in the highly scientific and protective space gear, but also for each one of those astronauts, they represent the work of thousands of hours, hundreds of people who will not get their photograph taken, people who have dedicated their entire lives to moments like this. Mark, talk to us about the pride of people behind the scenes.
Well, when you're around this world, there are two sort of cliches about it. One is that space is hard. Space is really hard. I mean, you heard Nick talk about how risky it is. It's just hard to do. I mean, the other thing you hear about is that space is the ultimate team sport. And for every astronaut who is the focus of attention, and understandably so, there are just thousands of people who have put all the hardware together, who have put all the systems together, who have made it possible for these 4 astronauts to climb into the capsule, which they'll do shortly. And here's the important thing too. A million things have to go right with each of these launches, and only one thing has to go wrong.
Right.
So all of those workers have to bring their A game every single day. It just takes one loose bolt or one faulty wiring, whatever, and all of a sudden, the kingdom is lost. And so you have to each astronaut is relying on these thousands of workers who will not step into the limelight the way they do. But it all has to come together, and that's what we're hoping for today, is that it all comes together on a launch like this one.
CBS News 24/7 continuing coverage with Mark Strassman and Brigadier General Nick Hague as we watch the astronauts here. And General Hague, I have another question for you. You see the countdown to launch, top right side of your screen, 4.5 hours to go before launch. So maybe explain to our viewers and people who are watching in the palm of their hand all over the world why they're getting close to going into the capsule if there's so much time yet to go before those rockets fire.
Yeah, and it gets back to there is risk, and so we're going to manage that risk as much as we possibly can. So they're going to take a 15-minute drive out to the launch pad, and then they're going to get in the capsule. We're going to do a leak check of their suits. We're going to do leak check of the hatches. We're going to make sure that all those systems are checked and double checked, because those are what are going to keep them alive for the next 10 days once they leap off the ground and head toward the moon. And so that takes time. There's a lot of sitting and waiting as you approach T-0 when you're in a seat on top of a rocket. And there's a lot of time to sit back and reflect. And a lot of that, for me, was thinking about all those faces of the folks that Mark was talking about, the people that supported you and trained you and taught you everything you needed to know to be successful in the moment. Those are the things that you think about on the drive out to the pad as you're sitting there waiting for the 2 hours that you don't have much to do while the rest of the team is doing everything they can to make sure that they check the systems, that they're in perfect condition and you're ready to go.
Well, and you see the warm smile of just one of those astronauts, Christina Cook, but she's got steel in her spine. You know her personally. When was the last time you talked to her or any of the astronauts? What did they have to say, and why do you think that today will be especially special in their family history?
They're getting on top of the biggest rocket we've launched in decades and heading to the moon. There's no way that this can't be a monumental day for their families. And their families should be immensely proud of everything that this crew has sacrificed. But the families have also sacrificed too, and I think it's worthwhile to take a little bit of time and say thank you to the families and everything that they've done to support these awesome humans to be able to be in the place that they're at.
Well, and I'll remind their neighbors, their lawns still need mowed, their kids still need to be picked up, there's still to-dos for families down here on terra firma. Mark, in the minute and a half that we have left, let's talk to you, my friend. We see the launch pad there behind you. As we await the launch, 4 hours and now 29 minutes away from now, What can people expect to see behind you?
Well, we've the fueling process, of course, we've gone to, then we have all the series of final checks. We're going to watch the crew get into the capsule. That's going to take a little bit of time, and then we're going to be in a sort of a waiting period, at least from the outside. There's going to be a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't get to see, but essentially it's the final checklist, right? I mean, you got to make sure that you're really ready to go, and everything so far has been picture perfect. It really has. We've talked about chance of showers, but even coming through here, but even that is supposed to be a non-event as far as the launch is concerned. So, you know, I think basically for a lot of people, it's going to be controlling their sense of anticipation until the launch period opens for a couple hours at 6:24 Eastern time, and then it's like, well, are we going to light this thing or not? And let's face it, all of us would like that to happen.
All right, General, we have about 20 seconds left in show. I'm an armchair philosopher here. As you see the culmination of the teamwork, maybe one or two sentences about the importance of working together in these United States to achieve great things.
You know, it is when you sit here and you witness all of this coming together, it does take thousands of people to make it happen. And everybody that is watching now should just feel this deep sense of pride in what our nation's been able to bring us to the brink of, going back to the moon. You know, what a better way to celebrate the 250th anniversary of this country.
Thank you so much to both of you. CBS News 24/7 will have continuing coverage throughout the day. Right now, you're looking at that van, and that van contains the 4 astronauts who will be blasting off to that. I dumb it down, guys, and call it the slingshot around the moon. That trajectory, though, will be able to feed back to the United States and to people all over the world the images of the moon. The first such mission in more than 50 years will be continuing coverage here on CBS News 24/7.